Michael Thompson parked his imported Audi in the garage of the Hancock Building in downtown Chicago. The dashboard clock read 3:47 a.m. He sighed, running his hand through the gray hair at his temples, feeling the weight of the last 30 hours without sleep. His trip from Singapore had been abruptly interrupted when Byteforge Systems' main servers collapsed, threatening million-dollar contracts and the reputation he had spent 15 years building. Dragging his wheeled suitcase through the silent parking garage, Michael struggled to keep his eyes open. The plan was simple: take a quick shower, change clothes, and head straight to the company headquarters in River North. There was no time for rest when millions were at stake. That had always been his motto since he founded the company in a small, rented office on Michigan Avenue. The elevator rose silently to the 37th floor. Michael rested his forehead against the cold mirror, trying to mentally organize his list of priorities for the coming hours. He hadn't thought about Ryan. His 8-year-old son would be sleeping at this hour like any child. Besides, Mrs. Wilson, the housekeeper who managed the home during the day, would have left everything in order before leaving. Sarah, the employee he had recently hired to handle the cleaning, would also have left hours ago. The apartment would be in absolute silence as always. That's what he expected. As he turned the key in the lock, his ears caught unexpected sounds, muffled voices, murmurs coming from the direction of the kitchen. Michael frowned, leaving his suitcase in the entryway and advancing with cautious steps down the hallway. The apartment's darkness was broken only by a weak light coming from the kitchen. As he approached, the murmurs became clearer. There, it'll pass soon. It's just a little scratch, nothing serious. Michael stopped at the kitchen entrance, observing the scene unfolding before his eyes. Sarah was kneeling beside Ryan. The boy was wearing dinosaur pajamas that Michael didn't remember buying. On his son's arm, a small cut was being cleaned, with extreme care by Sarah's delicate hands. An open first aid kit rested on the kitchen counter. "But will it hurt tomorrow, Miss Sarah?" Ryan's voice sounded fragile yet confident. "Hardly at all, and look, I made chocolate cookies, the ones you like, to help you sleep better." Michael remained motionless, not announcing his presence. There was something about the scene that deeply disturbed him. It wasn't the fact that Sarah was there at that hour of the morning, nor the wound on his son's arm. It was the naturalness, the familiarity, the way Ryan looked at Sarah, with trust, with affection, the way he accepted her care without protest, as if it were routine. "Come on, time to go back to bed." Sarah helped Ryan stand up, taking a cookie from the tray on the counter and handing it to him. "You have a math test tomorrow, remember? We need to be well rested." We, us. The plural used by Sarah hit Michael like an invisible punch. When was the last time he knew about a test at his son's school? When had he helped Ryan with homework? Silently, Michael backed up a few steps, partially hiding behind the dining room door. He watched as Sarah guided Ryan back down the hallway toward his bedroom, her hand gently resting on the boy's shoulder. There was an intimacy in that interaction that Michael didn't recognize, a routine of which he wasn't a part. When the footsteps faded away, Michael entered the kitchen and sat on the high stool by the counter. The aroma of freshly baked cookies filled the air. On the counter, besides the cookie tray, there was an open notebook. He moved closer and recognized Ryan's childish handwriting. They were math exercises, carefully corrected by an adult hand that wasn't his. Michael took one of the cookies and bit into it, feeling the chocolate melt in his mouth. How long had it been since he'd tasted something homemade? The apartment, theoretically his home, suddenly seemed like a strange place, inhabited by routines and habits he completely didn't recognize. He stood up and walked silently down the hallway, stopping in front of Ryan's bedroom door. It was ajar, and through the gap he could see Sarah sitting on the edge of the bed, running her hand through the boy's hair while reading a book in a soft voice. Ryan looked peaceful now, his eyes half closed with sleep. "Miss Sarah," the boy's voice interrupted the reading. "Yes, dear? Do you think Dad will come to my science presentation on Friday?" There was a pause. Michael held his breath. "Your father has a very important job, Ryan. He does the best he can. But you'll be there, won't you?" "Of course. I would never." "Miss your dinosaur presentation? It's going to be the best in the school." Michael backed away, feeling a pang in his chest. Science presentation? On Friday? How did he not know about this? He returned to the living room, took out his phone and checked his calendar. There was a meeting scheduled with Chinese investors exactly on Friday, a meeting he himself had scheduled, prioritizing above all else. He sat on the living room sofa in the darkness, trying to process what he had just witnessed. What else didn't he know about his own son's life? What other events had he missed? What other needs had he ignored in the name of Byteforge's success? He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to remember the last time he had really talked with Ryan. Not just superficial questions about school or brief good mornings before rushing off to the office. A real conversation. He couldn't remember. That he still. Sound of soft footsteps pulled him from these thoughts. Sarah was crossing the living room, heading to the kitchen. She stopped abruptly upon noticing Michael's silhouette on the sofa. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't know you'd be back today." The surprise in her voice was genuine. Michael stood up, feeling strangely out of place in his own home. "There was a problem at the company. I had to come back early." He paused, looking toward the hallway. "What happened to Ryan's arm?" Sarah hesitated for a moment. "He fell while playing on the playground at school. Nothing serious, just a scratch." "And why are you still here at this hour?" The question sounded harsher than Michael had intended. Sarah adjusted the apron she wore over her light blue uniform. "Ryan has been having trouble sleeping. He sometimes has nightmares. I thought it better to stay until he was completely asleep. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue." Michael remained silent for a few moments, digesting the information. Nightmares. His son had nightmares and he didn't even know about it. How long has this been happening? Sarah looked away, visibly uncomfortable. Since the accident, sir." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It's gotten worse in recent months. Ryan wakes up calling for his mother sometimes." The accident, it had been 2 years since Rebecca had passed, taken by a car crash on the Chicago River Drive. Michael had faced that absence by immersing himself even deeper in work, convinced that his responsibility was to ensure financial security for Ryan, as if money could fill the void left by his mother. "Do you stay here every night?" The question came out almost like an accusation. "Not every night. Just when I notice he's more agitated. The cookies help. The smell reminds him of his mother somehow." Michael felt his stomach sink. Rebecca loved to make chocolate cookies on Sunday nights. It was a tradition he had completely forgotten. "You don't need to do this, Sarah. It's not part of your duties." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a simple gesture that conveyed dignity. "I know, sir, but Ryan is a good boy. It's no trouble at all." The next day, Michael cancelled all his morning meetings, something he had never done before. He accompanied Sarah as she prepared breakfast for Ryan. He watched, fascinated, the perfectly orchestrated routine, the favorite cereal, the exact amount of milk, the glass of orange juice. Sarah knew exactly how Ryan liked things. "Dad?" The surprise on his son's face upon seeing him sitting at the breakfast table was a painful testimony to his daily absence. "You didn't go to work?" "No, buddy, I thought I'd take you to school today. What do you think?" Ryan looked at Sarah as if seeking confirmation. The gesture, almost imperceptible, was like a stab for Michael. His own son needed approval from someone else to accept his company. "Of course, Ryan," Sarah encouraged with a gentle smile. "It'll be fun. And don't forget that today is the day to bring your Amazon rainforest project." Michael watched as Sarah took a colorful folder from Ryan's backpack and checked its contents. Inside was a meticulously done project, with cutouts, drawings, and a small handwritten text. The handwriting was Ryan's, but Michael could see the adult guidance behind the work. "You did this together? Did this?" he asked, flipping through the pages. "Miss Sarah helped me with the hard parts," Ryan explained, his mouth full of cereal. "She knows everything about the forest because she was born near there." Michael looked at Sarah, realizing he knew almost nothing about her beyond the basics from her employment file. Louisiana native, 38 years old, widow, 1 daughter. Cold facts that revealed nothing about the woman who apparently knew his son better than he did. The drive to school was silent. Michael tried to start conversations, but his questions sounded artificial, technical. "How's school going?" "Do you like your new teacher?" Ryan responded with monosyllables, looking out the car window. Michael realized he didn't know how to talk to his own son. When they reached the school gate, the farewell was equally uncomfortable. Ryan got out of the car after a quick hug and ran to join his classmates. Michael remained parked, watching his son disappear among the other children. He felt like a stranger, an observer of Ryan's life, not a participant. Back at the apartment, Michael found Sarah organizing the living room. He observed her for a few moments, noticing for the first time the details. The small but strong hands, the dark hair tied in a simple bun, the erect posture that denoted pride. She was neither young nor old, not conventionally beautiful, but there was a dignity in her face that commanded respect. "Sarah, can we talk?" She stopped what she was doing, nodding. They sat at the kitchen table, the space that Michael was beginning to realize was the true heart of that apartment. "I want you to tell me about Ryan, everything I should know but don't." Sarah hesitated, her eyes fixed on the coffee cup she had just poured for herself. "It's not my place to judge you, Mr. Thompson." "I'm not asking for judgment. I'm asking for information." She sighed, finally meeting his eyes. "Ryan is an amazing boy, intelligent, sensitive. He's afraid of the dark, loves dinosaurs and dreams of being a scientist. He plays soccer on Saturdays at Lincoln Park, but he's not very good at it. Trips over his own feet sometimes." A soft smile appeared on her lips. "But he keeps trying. Week after week, he's persistent." Michael absorbed each word like a dry sponge. Each detail was a revelation, a piece of a puzzle he had never bothered to put together. "Does he have nightmares about the accident?" Sarah shook her head. "Not exactly. He dreams that he's lost, alone in dark places calling for someone who never comes." The weight of those words hit Michael hard. His son wasn't dreaming about the tragedy itself, but about the abandonment. That followed it, the emotional abandonment for which he, Michael, was responsible. And the science presentation? On Friday? "About dinosaurs. Ryan has been working on it for weeks. He made a model with a miniature Tyrannosaurus Rex. He's very excited." Michael thought about the meeting with the Chinese investors. Years ago, he wouldn't have hesitated to choose work. Now, for the first time, he felt doubt. "Sarah," he began, uncertain how to formulate the question, "why do you do all this? Why do you care so much?" The question hung in the air for a few moments. Sarah took a sip of coffee before answering. "I have a daughter, sir, Emily. She's 17 and lives with my mother in Georgia in Savannah. I can't be with her every day, so I understand the pain of absence." She paused. "When I see Ryan, I see a bit of her. All children deserve attention, affection. It's not something I think much about, I simply do it." The simplicity of the answer left Michael speechless. He, who had spent his entire life calculating gains, losses, investments, and returns, found himself faced with a completely different logic, a logic of care that expected no recognition or reward. "Emily, what is she like?" Sarah's face lit up. "Smart, stubborn, dreams of studying medicine, of helping people. Works part-time at a pharmacy to save money for her studies." "Medicine, that's an expensive dream. Yes, almost impossible for us, but Emily doesn't give up easily. She inherited that from me." The pride in Sarah's voice was palpable. Michael nodded, thoughtful. In his head, a plan was beginning to form. During the days that followed, Michael reorganized his schedule, delegated responsibilities, and for the first time in years, left the office before 8 in the evening. He arrived home in time to have dinner with Ryan, trying to fill the void of conversations that had never existed. The first attempts were disastrous. Ryan responded with monosyllables, clearly uncomfortable with his father's sudden attention. Michael, in turn, didn't know how to overcome the barrier of formality that he himself had created. It was Sarah who, gently, began to build bridges. During dinner, she would mention things Ryan had done during the day, creating openings for conversations. "Ryan, tell your father about the book you're reading at school. Or, Mr. Thompson, Ryan learned a new move in soccer today. Maybe he can show you this weekend. Slowly, painfully, Michael began to get to know his son. He discovered that Ryan was passionate about science, that he loved television programs, about animals, and that he secretly dreamed of having a dog. He learned that he was afraid of thunder, that he preferred to sleep with a small light on, and that he kept a photo of his mother under his pillow. Each discovery was a mixture of joy and guilt. How could he have been so absent for so long? How had he not noticed the most basic needs of his own son? Henri. Friday, Michael cancelled the meeting with the Chinese investors. His assistant, Jason, looked at him as if he had announced the end of the world. Cancel? Michael, it's the tech global Chinese investors. We've been pursuing this partnership for months. When I reschedule, say I had a family emergency. And for the first time, it wasn't an excuse, it was the truth. His family, what was left of it, had been in emergency for years. He just hadn't realized it. That afternoon, Michael sat among parents in the small classroom, decorated with colorful posters about dinosaurs. He felt out of place in his expensive suit, while the other adults wore casual clothes. A woman sitting next to him tried to make conversation. "Which child is yours?" "Ryan Thompson." The woman seemed surprised. "Oh, Ryan. My son Gabriel talks about him a lot. They're best friends." She smiled. "I usually see Sarah at these events." Michael felt his face warm. "Yes, Sarah has been a great help." When Ryan entered the room proudly carrying his dinosaur model, his eyes scanned the audience until he found Sarah, who was sitting discreetly at the back of the room. The boy's smile was immediate. It was only afterward that he noticed Michael, and his expression changed to shock, then to hesitant joy, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The presentation was flawless. Ryan spoke about the Tyrannosaurus Rex with surprising confidence for an 8-year-old, explaining its diet, habitat, and physical characteristics. Michael watched, amazed, at the extraordinary creature his son was, a creature he barely knew. At the end, when the parents applauded, Michael felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't just pride. It was regret for the lost time, for moments that would never return. After the presentation, Ryan ran to them, his eyes shining with excitement. "You came, Dad. Did you see my dinosaur?" "I did, buddy. It was incredible." Sarah smiled discreetly, moving away slightly to give space to the moment between father and son. Michael noticed the gesture and, on impulse, included her. "Sarah, thank you for helping Ryan with the model. It's perfect." The acknowledgement seemed to surprise her. Ryan looked between the two adults, as if trying to understand the new dynamic. "Miss, Sarah knows everything about dinosaurs," he declared with absolute confidence. "She helped me choose the right colors for the T-Rex." On the way back home, Michael suggested a stop at the neighborhood ice cream parlor. Ryan accepted enthusiastically, and Sarah politely tried to say goodbye, saying she would catch a bus home. "Please, come with us," insisted Michael. "You're part of this." She hesitated, but eventually agreed. At the ice cream parlor, Michael observed the interaction between Sarah and Ryan, the naturalness, the complicity, the shared nonverbal language. It was a connection he envied and, at the same time, was grateful existed. Without Sarah, Ryan would be completely alone in his world of solitude and absences. "Miss Sarah, tell Dad about the Mississippi." Ryan requested between spoonfuls of chocolate ice cream. Sarah smiled, a little shy. "I was born near New Orleans. My family had a small store on the banks of the Mississippi River." "And there are real alligators there," interrupted Ryan, his eyes wide with excitement, "and giant trees that seemed to touch the sky." Michael realized that Sarah had shared with Ryan not just basic care, but also stories, culture, experiences. Things that he, with all his international travels and global business, had never done. "How did you end up in Chicago?" asked Michael, genuinely interested. Sarah hesitated, stirring the spoon in the vanilla ice cream she had barely touched. "I came with my husband, David. He got a job with a construction company. When Emily was 6, he suffered an accident at the construction site." She paused. I was left alone with a small daughter in a big city. My mother came from the south to help, but Chicago was difficult for her. The noise, the rush. We ended up deciding that Emily would be better off with her in Savannah, where we have family. Michael absorbed the story, impressed by the strength of this seemingly fragile woman. It must be hard to be away from your daughter. It is. But we talk every day, and I send money every week. She's in her last year of high school now, dreams of college. The following week, Michael began to implement changes, small ones at first. He started having dinner at home every night. He bought books about dinosaurs to read with Ryan. On a Saturday, he took his son to Lincoln Park to play soccer, discovering with surprise that he himself was terribly bad at the sport, probably the origin of Ryan's lack of coordination. They laughed together when Michael tripped over his own ball, falling spectacularly onto the grass. It was the first time Ryan had laughed, openly in his father's presence Michael couldn't remember the last time. Sarah continued to be a constant presence, but Michael noticed a subtle change. She began to step back, giving space for father and son to build their own relationship. Still, it was she who best knew how to calm Ryan when he was anxious, how to make him smile when he was sad. One night, after Ryan fell asleep, Michael found Sarah in the kitchen, organizing the lunchbox for the next day. "Could you teach me?" he asked, gesturing to the lunchbox. Sarah looked surprised. "Teach you what exactly?" "How to take care of him. What he likes, what calms him. I want to learn." She smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "Of course. Ryan is easy, actually. He just needs attention to know he's important." That night, Michael learned that Ryan liked sandwiches cut into triangles, never rectangles, that he hated tomatoes but loved raw carrots, that he preferred grape juice to any other flavor. Small details that added together formed the map of a person, a map he was just beginning to decipher. 2 weeks later, Ryan had a nightmare. Michael woke up to the muffled screams coming from his son's room. He got up immediately, but upon reaching the door, he stopped. Sarah was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed, cradling Ryan in her arms. "It's all right, dear. It was just a dream. You're not alone." Michael backed away, feeling useless, incompetent in his own home. He returned to his room but couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Sarah had said about Ryan's nightmares, dreams of abandonment, of loneliness. The next morning, Michael was in the kitchen before Sarah even arrived. He tried to prepare breakfast for Ryan, but when his son entered, he looked at the table with suspicion. "Where's Miss Sarah?" "She should be arriving soon. I thought I'd prepare breakfast today. I made scrambled eggs. You like them, don't you?" Ryan nodded but didn't sit down. "But it's not Tuesday." "What about Tuesday?" "Tuesday is pancake day. Miss Sarah always makes pancakes on Tuesdays." Michael felt defeated by a simple detail. One more routine he didn't know about. One more element of the map he didn't possess. When Sarah arrived 15 minutes later, the tension in the kitchen was palpable. She assessed the situation with a quick diplomatic glance. "Mr. Thompson, what a pleasant surprise, already preparing breakfast." She smiled at Ryan. "What do you think about eating the eggs your father prepared and saving the pancakes for the afternoon snack? A change in routine can be fun." The simple solution worked. Ryan sat down, beginning to eat with less resistance. Michael gave Sarah a grateful look, which she just acknowledged with a discreet nod. Later, after Ryan left for school, Michael asked to talk with Sarah. "I feel like I'm competing with you for my own son's attention," he admitted, without beating around the bush. "And the worst part is I'm losing." Sarah sighed, sitting at the kitchen table. "It's not a competition, Mr. Thompson. Ryan has room in his heart for many people. You're his father. Nothing changes that. But he trusts you more. He feels safer with you. Because I've been present. That's all. It's not better or worse, it's just consistency." She paused. "You can build that too. It will take time, but children are surprisingly forgiving." Her honesty was refreshing. No accusations, no judgments, just the clear truth. Exposed like a medical diagnosis. Time and consistency. That's what Ryan needed. That's what Michael needed to learn to offer. That night, when Ryan had another nightmare, Michael was the first to enter the room. He sat on the edge of the bed, awkward, not knowing exactly what to do. "Hey, buddy. It's okay. Dad's here." Ryan looked at him with frightened eyes, still half trapped in the world of dreams. "The dark was trying to get me." "No darkness is going to get you, I promise." Michael turned on the small dinosaur-shaped lamp on the nightstand. The soft light cast gentle shadows throughout the room. He extended his hand hesitantly and began to stroke his son's hair, the way he had seen Sarah do so many times. "Do. You want me to call Miss Sarah?" Ryan shook his head to Michael's surprise. "No, stay here with me, Dad." The small progress of that night was just the beginning of a long and uneven journey. There were good days when Ryan actively sought his father's company, sharing discoveries about dinosaurs or showing his school drawings. And there were bad days when the distrust returned, when the boy closed himself in his particular world, inaccessible to Michael. Sarah continued to be the emotional pillar of the house, the reference of stability. But gradually, Michael began to build his own space in his son's life. He learned Ryan's language, not just his preferences and habits, but his fears, his joys, the small subtleties that formed his personality. One night, as Michael helped Ryan with his math homework, something he now did regularly, the boy asked a question that caught him off guard. "Dad, Miss Sarah has a daughter, doesn't she?" "Yes, Emily, why?" "Why doesn't she live with Miss Sarah? Doesn't she like her daughter?" The innocent question hit Michael like a punch. He chose his words carefully. "Of course she likes her. Sarah loves her daughter very much. But sometimes adults have to make difficult choices. Emily lives with her grandmother in Georgia, while Sarah works here in Chicago to be able to send money to them." Ryan frowned, processing the information. "That's sad. Miss Sarah must miss Emily a lot." "Yes, she must. Like I miss Mom?" Michael felt his throat tighten. Ryan rarely talked about Rebecca. "It's different, son. Emily's mother is alive. She's just far away for a while. But she misses her the same." Ryan seemed satisfied with his conclusion. "We could help, couldn't we?" "Help how?" "I don't know. You're rich, Dad. You could do something." The simplicity of the child's logic was disconcerting. Michael smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "You know what? That's a great idea. I'll think of something." The next morning, Michael called Sarah for a serious conversation. They were sitting on the apartment's balcony, overlooking the Chicago skyline. The day was just beginning, the sun still low, painting the buildings gold. "Sarah, I want to make you a proposal." She looked at him with caution. "What kind of proposal, Mr. Thompson?" "First, stop calling me sir. My name is Michael." She smiled timidly. "All right. Michael. You mentioned that your daughter dreams of studying medicine." "Yes. Emily has always wanted to be a doctor, since she was little." Michael took a deep breath. "I want to offer her a scholarship, full ride, university, housing, books, everything." Sarah's eyes widened, her hand going to her mouth. "What? No, I can't accept that." "It's not charity, Sarah. It's a return. For what you've done for Ryan, for this family." He paused. "Besides, you said she's intelligent and dedicated. America needs good doctors. Consider it an investment in the country's future." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "But why? Why would you do this for us?" Michael looked at the city horizon, thoughtful. "Because I've learned that there are debts that money can't pay. What you've given Ryan, the security, the affection, the presence, has no price. But I can do this for your daughter." Sarah remained silent for a long time, her trembling hands on her lap. "Emily would have to come to Chicago." "Yes. She could live here if you want. We have plenty of space." Seeing her hesitation, he added, "Or we could rent an apartment for the two of you near here, whatever works best. And my work here. Ryan. You would continue working here, of course, but with more flexible hours, so you could accompany Emily in her studies." Michael smiled. "And Ryan would have an older sister. I think he'd love that." 3 weeks later, Sarah traveled to Savannah to bring Emily. Michael insisted on paying for the plane tickets, ignoring Sarah's embarrassed protests. Ryan was electrified with anticipation. "What's she like, Dad?" "Emily." "I don't know, son. We'll discover together." On the day of their arrival, Michael and Ryan went to O'Hare Airport. Ryan carried a small sign with the names Sarah and Emily, written in colorful letters, decorated with dinosaurs drawn by himself. When the two finally appeared at the arrival gate, Michael felt a wave of emotion he hadn't expected. Sarah was smiling in a way he had never seen before, a full smile without reservations. Beside her walked a tall, thin young woman with the same expressive eyes as her mother. Emily was the image of determination. She carried a worn backpack and a small suitcase, and her eyes scanned the airport with a mixture of amazement and resolution. When she spotted Michael and Ryan, she hesitated for a moment. "Mom, is that your boss?" Michael heard her ask Sarah quietly. "Yes, and that's Ryan, the boy I take care of." Ryan, unable to contain his excitement, ran toward them, brandishing the sign. "Miss Sarah, you're back, and you must be Emily." The young woman smiled, bending down to Ryan's height. "And you're the famous Ryan. My mom talks about you a lot." "Are you really going to be a doctor? Are you going to heal people?" "I'm going to try," she smiled shyly. "First, I need to study a lot." Michael approached, extending his hand to Emily. "Welcome to Chicago, Emily. I hope you feel at home." She shook his hand with surprising firmness. "Thank you for what you're doing for me, Mr. Thompson. I don't know how to thank you. By being an excellent doctor someday." The first days were about adaptation. Michael had prepared the old office, which he rarely used, transforming it into a room for Emily. Sarah continued to sleep in the small maid's room, despite Michael's insistence that she occupy one of the main bedrooms. It wouldn't be appropriate, she would say with that dignity that characterized her. Emily, for her part, oscillated between shyness and vibrant curiosity. She was a serious, studious young woman, with a maturity that came from a life of challenges. Ryan immediately adopted her as a kind of older sister. He followed her around the house, asking questions about medicine, about Georgia, about everything. "Do you know how to heal wounds?" "Some," she would respond with patience, "but I need to learn much more." At night, Emily helped Ryan with his homework. She had a gentle way of explaining difficult concepts, a natural pedagogy that made Michael think that perhaps she would make an excellent pediatrician. Sarah observed the interaction between her daughter and Ryan with teary eyes. One night, when the children had already gone to bed, she approached Michael on the balcony. "I never imagined seeing this, Emily and Ryan together under the same roof." She smiled, looking at the city lights. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm dreaming." "You're not," Michael assured, "although I also have difficulty believing how everything has changed. Ryan is different, happier. The nightmares have decreased. Thanks to you, to both of you now." Sarah shook her head. "No, it's because of you too. You're present, Michael. It's what he always wanted." Emily's arrival brought a new dynamic to the apartment. The previously silent spaces were now filled with conversations, laughter, even occasional discussions. Real life, with all its complexities, had finally found a place in that elegant address. Michael completely reorganized his work routine. He delegated responsibilities, hired more managers, started doing more video conference meetings to avoid travel. Byteforge continued to grow, but he now had other priorities. One afternoon, returning early from the office, Michael found Emily studying in the living room. There were books spread everywhere, biology, chemistry, physics. She was preparing for the medical school entrance exams with an intensity that impressed him. "Studying hard?" he asked, sitting on the sofa next to her. Emily nodded, a pencil between her teeth. "The med school entrance exam at Northwestern is the most competitive in the country. You'll make it, I'm sure." She looked at him, hesitant. "Mr. Thompson, Michael, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you doing all this for me? You barely know me." The question caught him by surprise, although he knew that eventually it would be asked. Michael thought for a moment. I met your mother working here. I saw the way she cared for Ryan, how she genuinely cared about him at a time when I wasn't really present. He sighed. Sarah taught me a lot about what really matters, about presence, about care, about unconditional love. Emily nodded. Thoughtful. Mum has always been like that. Even when we had almost nothing, she made sure I had everything I needed. She worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night. Michael felt a lump in his throat. And now it's my turn to make sure you two have what you need. It's not your obligation. It's not obligation. It's choice. Emily smiled, a smile that looked very much like Sarah's. Thank you. Really. That night, during dinner, Ryan announced he wanted to have a birthday party. It was 2 weeks until he turned 9. I want to invite my whole class from school. And can we have a dinosaur cake and games and... Michael and Sarah exchanged amused glances at the boys' enthusiasm. Emily was already making notes in a small notebook. We can make educational games about dinosaurs, she suggested, and I can help make the cake. Ryan was radiant. It's going to be the best party ever. Michael realized with sudden clarity that he was witnessing the birth of something new. Not just a birthday party, but a family. A different family, unconventional, built not by blood ties or legal papers, but by daily choices, by presence, by mutual care. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. Ryan's birthday party was an absolute success. The apartment, normally austere and minimalist, was transformed into a Jurassic paradise with dinosaur decorations everywhere. Emily revealed herself to be an excellent baker, creating a Tyrannosaurus Rex-shaped cake that drew applause from the children. Sarah coordinated everything with her usual efficiency, while Michael just observed, amazed at the transformation of his home. The children ran through the apartment, their laughter echoing through the previously silent corridors. The parents of Ryan's classmates, initially intimidated by the elegance of the building and Michael's reputation as an inaccessible businessman, soon felt at ease thanks to the warm hospitality of Sarah and Emily. One of the mothers, Lauren, approached Michael as he served punch. "Ryan is different," she commented with a smile. "More confident, happier. Gabriel says he can't stop talking about family dinners and game nights." Michael smiled, watching his son running with friends, proudly showing off his collection of plastic dinosaurs. "We're learning together." "Your wife and stepdaughter are lovely," added Lauren, indicating Sarah and Emily with a gesture. Michael opened his mouth to correct the misunderstanding, but stopped. The comment caught him off guard. Sarah, his wife, Emily, his stepdaughter. The idea had never crossed his mind. Or had it? "Thank you," he responded simply, still processing the thought. That night, after everyone had left, and Ryan finally fell, asleep, exhausted but happy, Michael, Sarah, and Emily sat in the living room among the remains of the decorations. "It was perfect," said Michael, raising a glass of wine in a silent toast. "You two are amazing." Sarah smiled, but Michael noticed she seemed tired. Not just the physical fatigue from the party, but something deeper. "Are you all right, Sarah?" She hesitated, looking at Emily, who nodded encouragingly. "I received a TS job offer," she finally said. "A family in Lake Forest. They're offering almost double what I earn here." Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. Sarah leaving? He hadn't considered that possibility. "But what about Ryan? What about us?" The words came out before he could think. Sarah lowered her eyes. "Ryan is better now. You two are connecting. And with Emily here—" "It's not just that, Mom," Emily interrupted gently. "Tell him the truth." Sarah gave her daughter a reproachful look before continuing. "The situation here is complicated. The way we're living, all together." She paused. "People talk. Michael. At Ryan's school in the building, I hear the whispers." Michael frowned. "What kind of comments?" "The kind you can imagine when a housekeeper and her daughter start living in the widowed employer's home." She sighed. "I don't care what they think of me, but I worry about Ryan, about Emily, about you and your reputation." Michael felt a wave of anger. My reputation, is that what worries you? Shouldn't it? You're a public figure, Michael. Byteforge is an important company, and I'm just an employee. The word just echoed in the room, laden with unspoken meanings. You have never been just anything in this house, Sarah. A tense silence settled in. Emily stood up discreetly. I think you two need to talk alone. I'll check if Ryan is well. Covered. When they were alone, Michael moved closer to Sarah, sitting beside her on the sofa. Don't accept that job, please. Sarah sighed. It's best for everyone, Michael. It was good while it lasted, but it's not real. It can't last. Why not? Because we're from different worlds. You're Michael Thompson, CEO of Byteforge, and I'm Sarah Williams, the housekeeper. That's how the world sees us. I don't care how the world sees us. You should, for Ryan's sake. Michael felt cornered. Sarah was right in a way. There were comments, looks, assumptions, but the idea of losing this small family they had built was unbearable. What if, he began hesitantly, what if we changed how the world sees us? Sarah looked at him, confused. What do you mean? What? If you weren't my employee anymore? Are you firing me? No, Michael took a deep breath, surprised by his own thought. I'm proposing something different. The next morning during breakfast, Michael announced that they needed to talk, all together as a family. Ryan sat at the table, still in his pajamas, looking sleepy. Emily, already dressed for her pre-med prep course, seemed curious. Sarah maintained a cautious expression. I have a proposal to make, Michael began. A proposal for all of us. Ryan yawned. What kind of proposal, Dad? A change. A big change. He looked at each face around the table. I want us to move from here. That captured everyone's attention. Sarah furrowed her brow. Move where? To a house. A real house. With a yard. In Lincoln Park or North Shore. Or even by the lake, if you prefer. A place that's ours, all of ours. Ryan's eyes widened. A house with a yard? Can we get a dog? Michael smiled. Yes, we can get a dog. But why? Asked Emily, always the voice of reason. Why move now? Michael took a deep breath. Because this apartment represents my old life. A life of solitude, of absence. I want to start anew in a place that's ours. Without bad memories, without predefined roles. He looked at Sarah, who was watching him intently. I want us to be a real family. Not employer and employee. Not temporary housemates. A family. Emily looked from her mother to Michael, slowly, understanding. Are you asking my mum to— Not yet, Michael gently interrupted. I'm proposing that we try first. That we live together as equals, not as boss and employee. That we see if it works. Sarah remained silent, her face unreadable. Ryan, however, was beaming. You mean Miss Sarah and Emily are going to live with us forever? Like a real family? That's what I'm proposing, yes. Michael looked at Sarah. If they want to. The silence that followed seemed to weigh tons. Finally, Sarah spoke. It's too big a decision to make suddenly. We need to think carefully. We have time, Michael assured. I'm not asking for an immediate answer. But Ryan was already too excited to contain himself. Can we have a big yard? And a treehouse, and can I choose my room? Michael laughed. We can look at houses together as a family. Everyone will have a say in the choice. In the following weeks, Michael hired a realtor to show them properties. On weekends, the four visited houses in different Chicago neighborhoods. Ryan critically evaluated each yard, imagining where the dog they didn't yet have would stay. Emily worried about the distance to her future college. Sarah remained cautious, observing everything with practical eyes, commenting on the functionality of the kitchens, the ventilation of the rooms. Michael watched them all, realizing how each represented an essential part of what he now understood to be a family. Not the traditional family he had always imagined, but something new, built with care and conscious choice. One afternoon, after visiting a particularly promising house in Lincoln Park, a modern construction with a spacious garden and a century-old oak tree that Ryan loved, Sarah asked to speak with Michael privately. They walked together through the property's garden while Ryan and Emily explored the interior of the house. "Michael," she began, her voice low and serious, "we need to be realistic." "About what?" "About this. About us. About what people will say." She sighed. "Have you thought about what your partners will think when they know that we're building a life together?" Michael completed. "I don't care. Bite Forge is my company. I built it from the ground up. And your family, your friends?" Michael laughed without humor. "What family, Sarah? I only have a few distant cousins, and as for friends, the real ones will understand. The others don't matter. And the people at Ryan's school, the other parents, they're already talking, aren't they? Better to give them something concrete to talk about then." Sarah didn't seem convinced. Michael took her hands in his, a gesture he had never made before. "Sarah, I spent years of my life worried about what others thought. I built a company to impress people I didn't even know. I missed precious moments with my son trying to be someone the world would admire." He gently squeezed her hands. "And you know what I discovered? That none of it matters if you don't have anyone to share it with. If you don't have a home to return to." Sarah's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I'm afraid, Michael. Afraid that one day you'll wake up and realize you've made a mistake. That I'm not enough." The vulnerability in her voice hit him deeply. Sarah, always so strong, so sure in her role as caregiver, was finally revealing her own insecurities. "Sarah Williams," he said, his voice firm, "you are more than enough. It was you who saved my son when I wasn't paying attention. It was you who taught me what it really means to be a father. It was you who transformed a cold apartment into a home." She smiled through her tears. "I just did what any decent person would do. No, you did what only someone with an extraordinary heart would do." Michael took a deep breath. "I don't know if it will work. I can't promise it will be easy, but I know I want to try. With you. With Emily. As a family." On the way back to the apartment, everyone was silent, processing their own emotions. Ryan fell asleep in the back seat, his head resting on Emily's shoulder, who looked out the window, lost in thought. Sarah looked straight ahead, her profile illuminated by the city lights rapidly passing by. Michael drove, aware that they were at a decisive moment. The choices they made now would define the future, not just his, but all of theirs. When they reached the building, Michael parked the car and turned to Sarah before they got out. "So, what do you think?" She looked back at the sleeping Ryan and protective Emily beside him. Then she looked back at Michael. "I think we can try." 6 months later, the move was complete. The house in Lincoln Park, that same one with the century-old oak tree, had become the new home of the family they were building. Michael sold the Hancock apartment without hesitation, leaving behind the ghosts of his old life. The transition wasn't easy. There were adjustments, discussions, moments of doubt. Sarah, accustomed to being an employee, struggled to see herself as a partner. Michael, used to making decisions alone, needed to learn to share. Emily worried about what her college classmates would think. She had been accepted to Northwestern's pre-med program, an achievement that filled everyone with pride. And Ryan, always sensitive to changes, had nights when the nightmares returned, even with everyone's constant presence. The house, however, made everything easier. It was a neutral space, without previous memories, without pre-established roles. Gradually, each found their place. Ryan's room was a celebration of dinosaurs, with walls painted to look like a Jurassic forest. Emily had a spacious study area, with shelves full of medical books. Sarah transformed the kitchen into her kingdom, a place where she experimented with new recipes while humming songs from her childhood in Louisiana. And Michael, for the first time in years, had a home office he actually used, not to work until exhaustion, but to be present even when he needed to resolve company matters. The routine established itself naturally. Michael took Ryan to school every morning, while Sarah prepared healthy lunches for Emily to take to college. In the late afternoons, Emily helped Ryan with his homework, while Michael and Sarah took turns preparing dinner and handling domestic matters. The evenings were sacred: family dinners, board games, movies, conversations. And as promised, there was a dog, a golden retriever named Rex, chosen by Ryan from an animal shelter. The dog quickly became an essential part of the family, sleeping at the foot of Ryan's bed and definitely keeping the nightmares away. There were external challenges, of course. At Byteforge, rumors spread quickly. Michael Thompson, the technology visionary, was living with his former housekeeper. Some executives turned up their noses, others made jokes in the corridors. Michael faced it all with a serenity that surprised even himself. In a particularly tense meeting with the board of directors, one of the oldest investors, Robert Mendez, expressed concern about the company's image. "Michael, understand," said the middle-aged man, uncomfortable. "We're not judging your personal choices, but Byteforge is about to go public. International investors are conservative. This unconventional situation might raise questions." Michael looked around the table, at the tense faces of the executives and board members who for years had been his only social circle. "My family is not a situation," he responded calmly. "It's the best decision I've ever made. And if that affects the perception you or any investor has of my ability to lead this company, perhaps we need to reconsider our partnership." The silence that followed was broken by Jason, his longtime assistant, now operations director. "Personally," said Jason, adjusting his tie, "I think an emotionally balanced CEO with a stable family life is exactly what investors should value." The unexpected support changed the tone of the meeting. In the end, the board backed down. The IPO would proceed as planned. Michael's personal life would remain exactly that, personal. At home, Sarah faced her own challenges. The mothers of Ryan's classmates, who had previously treated her as an employee, now didn't know how to relate to her. Some were openly hostile, others excessively friendly, as if compensating for past behaviors. "I don't know if I belong in this world, Michael," she confessed one night after a particularly uncomfortable school event. "What world?" "This world of traditional families, of mothers who don't work, of important surnames." Michael held her hand. "You don't need to belong to their world. They need to adapt to our world, a world we've built our own way." Emily had her own obstacles. In medical school, rumors circulated about how she had gotten in. Not on merit, some said, but through the influence of her rich stepfather. She came home crying one afternoon. "I studied so hard, Mom," she sobbed in Sarah's arms. "I spent sleepless nights preparing, and now they say I only got in because Michael paid someone." Michael, who had heard everything from the doorway, felt a wave of protective anger. "Who said that? I'll talk to the dean, to the head of the school, to whoever necessary." Sarah calmed him with a gesture. "No, Emily needs to face this on her own. Show her worth through her own merit." "Mom's right," agreed Emily, wiping her tears. "I'll show them who I am. Not by what they say, but by what I do." And that's what she did. In the months that followed, Emily immersed herself in her studies with renewed determination. She became one of the best students in her class. She participated in research projects, volunteered at public hospitals. Little by little, the respect of her colleagues came, not for her last name or connections, but for her hard work. Ryan was the one who adapted most easily. For him, the new family configuration seemed the most natural thing in the world. In his childish logic, there was nothing strange about a family formed by a father, an almost mom, as he occasionally called Sarah, an older sister, and a dog. It was simply his family. One afternoon, his teacher asked the students to draw their families for a school project. Ryan returned home radiant, displaying his drawing. 5 stick figures, himself, Michael, Sarah, Emily, and Rex, represented by a shape that vaguely resembled a dog, all holding hands under a bright sun. "The teacher said my family is different," he commented during dinner. "She said it's unconventional." Michael exchanged concerned glances with Sarah. "And how did that make you feel, son?" Ryan shrugged, focused on cutting his steak. "I said all families are different. Gabriel has 2 dads. Luisa has a mom and a grandma. Miguel has a bunch of brothers and sisters." He looked up, smiling. "The teacher said I was right, and then she put my drawing on the classroom wall." The simplicity of Ryan's vision reminded Everyone that perhaps they were overcomplicating things. Perhaps a family was simply people who cared for each other, who chose to be together, who built something greater than themselves. On the eve of the first Christmas in the new house, Michael found Sarah on the back porch, watching the oak tree, illuminated with small colored lights, a surprise he had prepared for Ryan. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, offering her a glass of wine. "How life takes turns," she responded, accepting the drink. "A year ago I was adjusting a Christmas stocking for Ryan in the apartment, worried because he seemed so alone. And now we're here." Michael smiled, remembering that night when he had returned from his trip and found Sarah taking care of Ryan. In the kitchen, it seemed like another life. "Do you regret anything?" Sarah shook her head. "No, nothing. And you?" "Only not having realized sooner what was right in front of me." They remained silent, watching the lights twinkle on the tree. From inside the house came the voices of Ryan and Emily, cheerfully discussing the best way to decorate the Christmas. "Cookies." "Ryan asked me today if you're my girlfriend," commented Michael, smiling. "He said that Gabriel from school thinks we're dating, but that's a kid thing. Adults get married." Sarah laughed, blushing slightly. "And what did you answer?" "That he was right about one thing. You're not my girlfriend." Michael took something from his coat pocket, a small blue velvet box. "At least not yet, but maybe we can change that." Sarah's eyes widened. "Michael!" "It's not an impulse, Sarah. I've thought a lot about this, about us, about the family we already are in practice." He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring with a single stone. "I don't want you to feel pressured. We can wait as long as necessary, but I want you to know that for me, you're already much more than a companion. You're the person who taught me the true meaning of family." Sarah looked at the ring, then at Michael, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Are you sure about this? Absolutely sure." "More sure than I've ever been about any other decision in my life." She smiled, extending her hand for him to place the ring. "Then yes. My answer is yes." On Christmas morning, when Ryan and Emily discovered the news, their reaction was pure joy. Ryan jumped around the living room, shouting that he had received the best present ever. Emily hugged her mother tightly, whispering words of happiness in her ear. The Lincoln Park house, which was already a home, became the setting for a new phase. Not a perfect phase. There would still be challenges, adjustments, difficult moments. The outside world would continue questioning, judging, trying to fit that family into pre-existing molds. But within those walls, under the shade of the century-old oak tree, among Rex's cheerful barks and Ryan's laughter, something precious had been built. Something that didn't depend on external approval or traditions. One afternoon, months later, Michael was sitting in his home office when Ryan entered, carrying a science book. "Dad, did you know that trees don't just grow upward? They grow downward too with their roots." Michael smiled, pulling his son onto his lap. "That's true. And do you know why roots are important?" "To hold the tree to the ground?" "Yes. And also to nourish, to feed. Without strong roots, no tree grows healthy." Ryan nodded, absorbing the information. "Like our family. Are we like a tree?" Michael looked out the window at the yard where Sarah and Emily were talking under the oak tree, at Rex running in circles around them, at the house that now sheltered so many stories and promises. "Yes, son. Exactly like a tree, growing in all directions, with increasingly stronger roots." Ryan smiled, satisfied with the answer, and returned his attention to the book. Michael remained there, holding his son, feeling a certainty he had never experienced. In all his years of professional success, the certainty of finally being in the right place, with the right people, building something that no business success could ever buy, a true family, founded not on conventions or expectations, but on daily choices, constant presence, genuine love. And that, Michael now knew, was the only kind of success that truly mattered. The wedding was a small, intimate affair held in the backyard of their Lincoln Park home. Only close friends and colleagues were invited, those who had supported their unconventional journey without judgment. Ryan, beaming with pride, served as the ring-bearer, while Emily stood beside her mother as maid of honor. Sarah wore a simple, ivory dress that highlighted her natural elegance. As she walked across the lawn toward Michael, with spring flowers blooming around them, he felt a surge of emotion that caught him by surprise. This woman, who had entered his life as an employee, had transformed it in ways he never could have imagined. "You look beautiful," he whispered when she reached him. "And you look happy," she replied, noting the rare ease in his usually serious, "Feel like I am," he confirmed, probably for the first time in years. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, honest promises of partnership, respect, and commitment, not just to each other, but to the family they were creating together. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ryan couldn't contain his excitement, jumping up and down, causing everyone to laugh. At the reception, Jason, Michael's assistant turned operations director, raised a toast. "To Michael and Sarah, who remind us all that families come in many forms and that it's never too late to find your way home." Life settled into a new rhythm after the wedding. Michael continued to lead Byteforge, but with a fundamental difference in his approach. He was no longer defined solely by his work. He made it home for dinner most nights, coached Ryan's Little League team on weekends, and carved out time to simply be present. Sarah, for her part, decided to pursue education. With Michael's encouragement, she enrolled in college courses, working toward a degree in early childhood development, a field she had natural talent in, but never the opportunity to formally study. "Are you sure about this?" she had asked when Michael suggested it. "College at my age? Why not?" he had countered. "You have wisdom and experience that younger students don't. Besides, it's never too late to pursue something you're passionate about." Emily thrived in medical school, her initial struggles giving way to academic success and growing confidence. She developed a particular interest in pediatric oncology, inspired, she said, by the resilience of children facing life's most difficult challenges. One evening, as Michael helped her study for a particularly difficult exam, Emily looked up from her textbooks with a thoughtful expression. "You know, when Mom first told me about your offer, I thought there had to be a catch," she admitted. "People don't just do things like that without expecting something in return." Michael put down the flashcards he was holding. "And now?" "Now I understand that sometimes people surprise you, in good ways." She smiled. "Thank you for being one of those surprises." Ryan, meanwhile, grew from a shy 8-year-old into a confident, curious preteen. His passion for dinosaurs evolved into a broader interest in paleontology and natural sciences. His nightmares became increasingly rare, replaced by ambitious dreams about scientific expeditions and discoveries. The transformation in their lives wasn't without challenges. Sarah still encountered prejudice from some of the other mothers at Ryan's private school, subtle snubs at parent-teacher conferences, exclusions from certain social circles. "It doesn't matter," she told Michael after a particularly uncomfortable school fundraiser. "I'm not there to make friends, I'm there for Ryan." But for every closed door there were unexpected openings. Lauren, the mother who had first mistaken Sarah for Michael's wife at Ryan's birthday party, became a genuine friend. She and her husband, David, were among the few couples who regularly joined them for dinner or weekend outings with the children. "You know what I like about your family?" Lauren once commented to Sarah as they watched their sons play soccer in the park. "You chose each other. There's something beautiful about that." As Byteforge continued to grow, eventually going public with a successful IPO, Michael found himself frequently asked about his work-life balance in business interviews. It became a question he no longer dreaded, but welcomed. "The irony," he told a business magazine, "is that I'm actually a better CEO now that I'm not working 80-hour weeks. Perspective matters, and having people to come home to, people who don't care about stock prices or quarterly reports, that gives you the kind of perspective that actually makes you better at your job." The reporter had looked skeptical. "And you don't miss the old days, the freedom to focus entirely on the business?" Michael had laughed. "Freedom? I was a prisoner of my own making. Now I'm free." 2 years after the wedding, they added a new member to their family, a baby girl they named Rebecca after Ryan's mother. The pregnancy had been unexpected. Sarah was 41, Michael 45, but the joy it brought was immeasurable. Ryan was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to hold her, read to her, show her his collection of dinosaur fossils that wouldn't interest her for years. Emily, home on break from medical school, became an instant second mother, applying her medical knowledge to every small cry or sneeze with endearing seriousness. One night, as Sarah nursed the baby in the nursery they had created from what was once a guest room, Michael sat beside her, watching in quiet amazement. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked softly. "When you first came to work at the apartment?" Sarah smiled, stroking the baby's cheek. "Not in my wildest dreams. I was just trying to do a good job, to send money home to Emily." She looked up at him. "And you? Did you imagine this?" "I didn't even know what I was missing," he admitted. "I thought success meant one thing. I had no idea it could look like this." The baby's tiny hand wrapped around his finger, a grip surprisingly strong for something so small, like the roots of the oak tree in their yard, reaching deep into the earth, anchoring them all in place. As Rebecca grew, so did their sense of completeness. The family vacation photos that lined the walls of their home told the story of their journey. Ryan growing taller, Emily in her white coat at medical school, Sarah's growing confidence, Michael's softening demeanor, and baby Rebecca's first steps, first words, first everything. 5 years after Michael had returned early from that Singapore trip to find Sarah caring for Ryan in the middle of the night, they hosted a large celebration in their backyard. It was Emily's medical school graduation party, combined with Sarah's college graduation. She had completed her degree in early childhood education and was planning to open a small preschool program focused on helping children from single-parent families. As friends, family, and colleagues mingled on the lawn, Michael found himself standing beside the oak tree, watching the scene unfold. Ryan, now 13 and lanky, was showing his science project to Emily's medical school friends. Rebecca, a spirited 3-year-old with her mother's eyes and father's determined expression, was running circles around her grandmother, Sarah's mother, who had moved to Chicago after Rebecca's birth. Sarah approached, handing him a glass of champagne. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about that night," he said. "When I came home early and found you with Ryan in the kitchen, how different everything would be if I'd stayed in Singapore one more day." She slipped her arm through his. "Maybe it would have happened anyway, just later. Some things are meant to be." "You believe that, in things being meant to be?" "I believe in recognizing opportunities when they appear," she said thoughtfully, "and in having the courage to take them, even when they're unexpected." From across the yard, Ryan called out, waving them over to join some game he had organized. Rebecca was already there, jumping up and down in excitement. Emily stood nearby, her new medical degree making her look somehow more grown up. Though to Michael she would always be the serious teenager who had arrived at O'Hare Airport with a worn backpack and determined eyes. "We should join them," Sarah said, tugging gently at his arm. As they crossed the lawn together, Michael felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him for the second chance he'd been given, for the family that had formed around him, not through obligation or bloodlines, but through choice and love, for the courage to step away from one kind of success to discover another, far more meaningful one, and for Sarah, the unexpected heart of it all, who had taught him that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or achievements, but in moments shared, in growth witnessed, in love given and received. Under the spreading branches of the oak tree, surrounded by the family they had built together, Michael Thompson finally understood the simple truth that had eluded him